And good morning, Joe Justice here, coming to you live on November 29th, 2022. It is Tuesday. It is the Tuesday following the Monday after Thanksgiving. I hope everybody is getting back into the swing of things, having a good time, getting back to work and getting back to your regular schedules. Not a whole lot of fun. It's funny. It takes about a week to get used to being back from a vacation. And this time of year, of course, Christmas is just around the corner, so there's going to be all kinds of other disruptive events and parades and visiting with family and all kinds of stuff like that. So this time of year is always busy, but that's no excuse. That's no excuse to miss out, to not get your workout in, to eat terribly. I know you're not going to eat great this time of year. I know I don't eat perfectly, but I still try to focus on the days that I can and do the best that I can. And then I really do strongly believe, even in hectic times, to get in a little bit of exercise, even if it's just a little half-hour walk every morning. I think that that's totally fine, and I think that's a great idea. I still like to do this week. I'm doing yoga all week. I'm doing a recovery week from, I recently did a lot of weight training. So this week I'm focusing on recovery. So, hey, I got a broken watch, and I've been trying to fix it, but I just can't seem to find the time. That's pretty good, right? All right, enough dad jokes for today. Hey, if you're anything like me, you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, you probably saw the late night infomercials, or, maybe you saw on TV this guy named Richard Simmons. Richard Simmons was everywhere when I was a kid. He would be on these talk shows, Regis and Kathy Lee, and those types of shows, the morning, Waking Up with America. I don't remember the name of all those shows. It's funny because, you used to watch those types of shows every day. There used to be all kinds of different talk shows, like Ricky Martin. Of course, Oprah was really big. But there's like this whole circuit of talk shows. I guess all that stuff's been replaced by YouTube and Facebook these days, right? But I remember there was this guy named Richard Simmons, and he used to do this whole sweating to the oldies thing. And it was that along with, all of these kinds of infomercials that were all about aerobics. Aerobics was a big deal. I remember Jane Fonda had those that series of aerobics videos? I can just remember all that stuff. It was always advertised. There were basically two types of exercise videos that were always being advertised, or exercise tools, exercise techniques, and it was different types of aerobics. And you had those. You had like the Richard Simmons and the Jane Fondas and those types, or you had the Arnold Schwarzenegger types, right? There was the guy that used to be on the. There was this guy that used to pop up all the time on infomercials named Tony Little, and he was this kind of sort of bodybuilder-esque guy. He wasn't like a huge giant guy. He was like, attainable kind of fitness guy. And there was also a guy named, his whole thing was Body by Jake, and he was a strength trainer type too. But that was the two different types of people that you would see in late night infomercials and stuff all the time. You had Tony Little, and you had the Body by Jake guy, the big muscular guys, Arnold Schwarzeneggers and all, Stallones and all those. Or you had the fit, lean, fun, having a good time, Richard Simmons types. And they were very different types of individuals, right? They did not have a whole lot in common. But what's funny is they kind of modeled the two basic types of exercise. When you're looking at fundamentally, the two basic types of exercise are aerobic and anaerobic exercises. So what does that mean? What's the value of each one of those types of exercises? When is one right? When is the other one right? So first off, let's start from the beginning. What is the definition of aerobic versus anaerobic? So anaerobic exercise, all anaerobic means is without air, anaerobic, or without oxygen, I should say. Technically, it means without oxygen. And aerobic means with oxygen. So aerobic exercises are the exercises that you do long, sustained periods of time that are about endurance. So that's that Richard Simmons types, and those were very popular type of classes in the 80s and in the 90s. They were just called aerobics. That was before you had more branded type of aerobic like you have today, like jazzercise or whatever they do right now. Jazzercise is probably way out of date. I don't think anybody does jazzercise, but there used to be all kinds of there's been all kinds of different branded ones. There was like Taibo, I remember, is really big, and then of course they have classes today. They have all kinds of different ones, and and those are what you call aerobics. So basically, you're looking to get about 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. So it's different depending on who the person is, but you want to get your heart rate elevated above 50%, and then you want it to stay there for a long period of time. That's aerobic exercise. Anaerobic is what you basically get with strength training or with sprinting or that type of thing. So that's what you're looking at with weightlifting. That's what you're looking at with sprinting. That's what you're looking at with the type of exercises that you can do in short bursts. So that's anaerobic. Anaerobic is more about building muscle, building strength, and aerobic is more about burning fat, really. Now, anaerobic exercise also builds conditioning. So, because you're stressing your body at the utmost. So that's where things like high intensity interval training comes from. And what kind of happened? So it was kind of interesting because over the years, aerobics, it used to, so kind of the way that things evolved was it used to be really common for people to take things like dance classes to stay in shape. That used to be like a really common thing, especially like you can go back and look at like Hollywood actresses and stuff. They would take dance classes to help maintain their body. And that's because dance is an aerobic activity, and it's very demanding and very difficult. So over time, they kind of standardized that in the 80s to turn it into like a class, like an actual exercise for exercise sake. Like we do everything else. It's kind of funny, it's kind of like weightlifting. Real like 100 years ago, we didn't have weightlifting. We just lifted bales of hay because that's what we had to do. Same thing with, we used to do like exercise, like dance and stuff like that, and then we just kind of standardized it into exercise routines, and that's where aerobics came from. And then going into the 90s, aerobics kind of transitioned to into the 90s and early 2000s. High intensity interval training became much more popular because the whole problem with aerobic exercise is it takes a long time. And nobody wants to take the time. So there were some studies that came out that high-intensity interval training did just as much in a shorter period of time. So that was anaerobic activity. So high-intensity interval training was anaerobic because you would sprint. So instead of jogging for an hour, for example, you would do a combination of sprinting and resting for a half hour. And that would effectively accomplish the same thing. Also, they found that interval training improves your overall capacity quite a bit. So if you're actually working on your conditioning, so if you're working on improving race speed or performance speed, power, things like that, then high intensity interval training was the way to go. And a lot of aerobics kind of fell off. But aerobics still has a good place, and it's got a great place in a regular routine. What aerobic exercise is really great for is for burning fat. It's not good for burning sugar, carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates get stored as fat and all that kind of stuff, but your body has a ton of sugar stored as glycogen in the muscle. And long, slow burn type exercises like aerobics, if you get your body in a good state and you're not overloaded with sugar and you don't have tons of glycogen and stuff. So if you go on a sugar, reduce your sugar and grains for a day or two, and so that your body is running more off of fat stores, then aerobic activity can be a really effective way to burn fat really, really easily. So there's definitely still a place for it. So that's fundamentally the difference between aerobic activity and anaerobic activity. They both have their place. Anaerobic is definitely more popular nowadays, and you definitely don't hear as much people talking about aerobics as you used to. It's more for sustained type of exercises, and I think that it's still pretty effective. But the downside is that it does take the time. It does take the time. And if you had the choice between working out for a half hour a day or working out for 2 hours a day, most people, even though the 2 hours isn't going to be as strenuous, it's going to be more like a light jog or a walk or something like that. Most people are still going to opt for the half hour because, we're just busy people. That's why you don't hear about aerobics as much as you used to. Hope you found this helpful today. Hope you have an opportunity to try out a little bit of aerobic activity. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and keep up with me, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.